Siman Aleph, the last Seifim discussing Korbanos. 2 weeks ago in our first class on the Shulchan Aruch track, inside, until Siftes, we are going to review what we did so far on the subject of Korbanos, and we are then going to continue from information that we haven't yet mentioned on this subject. So let's begin.
Wait a second.
We're reviewing inside. We're reading from Sif Hey. We read this 2 weeks ago. We're going to read it again quickly and review what we already learned and then move further on. Sif Hey. Toiv Leimer Parshas Akedah Parshas Aman Vaser Sadibus Parshas Leilo Minchol Shlam Chatas V'Ashim. The Mechad and the Shulchan Aruch in chapter 1, Halacha 5, lists for us a number of different paragraphs that we should recite. You see, in Judaism, we all know that there's many prayers that we say. But there is a...
No,
there
just trying to catch up. Where are
we? There are a lot of different prayers that we recite as Jews. Now, the purpose, reasons, motivations, and cause of establishment of those prayers are very different from one to another. In general, we can sum up prayer as something we do between us and God to ask for something. That covers majority of all tefillas that we have. That covers Shachris, that covers Mincha, it covers Ma'ariv, right? We daven Shemana Esrei as the request. We say Psuke de Zimra in order to praise God and enliven our hearts so that we can fulfill the mitzvah derais of Kriya Shema. You can just help him out. Get it twice. And that then leads up to Shemana Esrei. So all of davening, of Shachris, Mincha, Ma'ariv are basically there for the sake of fulfilling the mitzvah of prayer to daven to Hashem. But then we have all these other things that we say, different prayers that we say at different times, and a whole bunch of them that we say before davening, some we say after davening. What are their purposes? So that's really what the Mechaber here is touching upon. Miscellaneous paragraphs that we recite. After we finish reading inside, we're going to go through each one. We're going to go through what to say, why to say it, how to say it, why some don't say it, and any halachic details related to it. Chapter 1. Again, we're in chapter 1. Siman Aleph, chapter 1, Halacha 5, we're in the Ramah. The Ramah says that Aseres Hadibris, which the Mechaber here mentions, should not be said by the community together. We'll review this again soon. Sifah, Parshas Karbanos Yom B'Yom, the Karbanos, that the paragraphs of Karbanos should only be said by daytime. Sif Zayin, Shesayin Parshas Ha'olah, when a person concludes reading the paragraph of the Ola sacrifice, he should then say at the conclusion, may it be your will, God, that this be considered as if I had brought this sacrifice to you. So too you should say the same paragraph after the Mincha sacrifice and the Shlomim paragraph that you read. Okay, Sifches, again, we're going to explain all this in a moment. After one's done the Karbanos, this we do in davening, one should recite the verse of the Shachat, right? We say this in the Tilas Hashem Siddur, after we are done saying the Parshas HaKamim, right here. Yeah, so we're going to go into why we say this, so what the significance is. But that's Sifches that you're supposed to say that. In Siftes, Yesh Lang Lam Parshas Akir, V'achar Parshas Tumas Hadeshcha, Parshas Atam, V'achar Parshas Mizbeach, Mikta K'teres, Parshas Aman K'teres. It's just that the Mechaber here adds 4 other paragraphs that some are accustomed to, that are customary to say. The Kior paragraph, Tumas Hadeshin, the Tamid paragraph, and K'teres. Okay, so that's a review from inside. We're now going to go outside and explain everything we just read, plus some more.
This is why I have to wake up, huh?
Okay, let's begin with the Akedah, the first thing mentioned. So we're going to go through each one as I said. Parshas Akedah we already reviewed 2 weeks ago in the last class on the subject, that the reason for reciting Parshas Akedah, we said, the Alter Rebbe writes in the Shulchan Aruch that it's for 2 reasons. Who remembers the 2 reasons that we said? The Madura Kama, the Alter Rebbe says, reason number 1 is to arouse divine mercy from God upon us. In fact, that's hinted to in the Rebbeinu Shalom. Right? The next paragraph, Ben Shalom, we say just like Avram Avinu quashed his desires or his mercy, so too we should quash your anger, or we would like you to quash your anger. something of the sort. So that's number one. It's for basically for Hashem. We're doing it to get in with Hashem. But the second reason the Alter Rebbe records in the Shulchan Aruch Siman Aleph Madura Kama, likewise the Mishnah Berurah brings this down in Sefei. If you look in Shiur Sefei, he also brings it down. That the second reason is for us to emulate Avram Avinu, and we spoke about 2 weeks ago how we have to get up like a lion and quash our Yitzhar. Well, Avram Avinu almost slaughtered his son for the sake of God. I'm sure we can do a little bit of self-control. It's a little less than that level, and we can emulate our patriarch in that. As the Alter writes in Tanya, that if we can give up our life in serious nefesh for Hashem, certainly the baby stuff we can do. Certainly, right, the little things we can overcome the Yitzhar with. Okay. Regarding the Parashas HaAkedah, how is it recited? When may it be recited? So how? There's not many details to that. With your mouth. That's pretty much it. You say it with your mouth. Okay? But when? Can you say it at night? Let's say right now, Aleis HaShachar, according to the latest daya, it's probably about 5 o'clock. You have some people that they go to work very early. Or you have areas in the world that their morning in winter is very late, such as Florida can reach Aleis HaShachar in 6, 7 o'clock. Right? So we have a big problem here. When can they start? So davening, we know you can't daven before Aleis. That's clear. You can't daven Talis Tefillin before Aleis. No, Krishma also you can't do before Aleis, and Sukkot Azim also you don't do before Aleis. You can't do anything before Aleis. Maybe you're thinking of dates. So Aleis. So bedtime Shema. Yes, you can say bedtime Shema before Aleis. You can do many things. You can do somersaults also.
No, you cannot put on tefillin.
Correct. And you can't say Krishma, you're not Yaitse.
You could say.
As I said,
you can say Alamita.
So the question is, what about Parashas HaAkedah? I want to get in. I remember when I was working in Atarot near Jerusalem, which is where all the slaughterhouses are, the kosher slaughterhouses. And so I used to have to go there like 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning, literally. That's the time I would have to be there at. I would open up the place at 4:30 in the morning or 5 o'clock in the morning, I remember. But it was nighttime. It was way before Aleis. It was not Aleis yet. So we're very, very tight for time. So with everything that is mutter to say before Aleis, literally we're counting minutes. We say also in the army, it's the same idea. So Parashas HaAkedah, can you say before Aleis? The answer is technically yes, because all you're doing is just reading a parasha to remind you of your Avodas Hashem, of quashing Yitzhara, getting mercy from the Eibishter. However, there's another reason why you should avoid saying it at night if possible, and that is because there's a rule that we've gone through in our previous classes. You should not recite scripture at nighttime. Mikra, based on the Arizal's teaching, is brought in the Berhetiv, in Simulation Amalaf, we avoid saying Mikra at night. We avoid reading verses. Now, what is Parashas HaAkedah? It's verses. You're reading from the Torah, so therefore, ideally, it should be avoided at night. You should only do it after Aleis HaShachar. But in the cases of, like this, okay, we can let it go.
Learning Chumash, Kikas is not a good thing at night.
It's a pirush,
Ideally, Chumash should be said by day, but as the Rebbe answered, that since it is with Pirush Rashi, therefore it's okay. Shana Rabbah is an exception. Exceptions don't become the rule. Shana Rabbah is an exception to this rule. It's in Practical Halacha, Volume 1, Sefer I published 2 years ago. There's a whole article on that there. You can look it up also on the website.
The
money, let's move on. At night, no, it shouldn't be said at night.
Are we allowed to learn at night?
Targum also is prominent.
Where are you allowed to learn at night?
There's plenty of oral Torah to learn. I have 23 books.
Targum is considered a pirush. Targum is considered.
If you need help, 23 books. Okay.
Sorry, but Targum is a pirush.
But basic Kabbalah we don't read it at night. It's also,
The
whole thing's a pickle.
Except on Friday.
The whole thing's a pickle. Except Thursday night. Some are accustomed. No Friday.
Thursday night.
Okay, let's continue. The man we already discussed. This was Mamash last week's parasha. It's right in par with the parasha. Right, the falling of the man. So the Shulchan Aruch listed its second one was already the falling of the man. And guess what? How come we don't say it? In fact, we mentioned this 2 weeks ago. We said no Siddurim today, as far as I know, have it printed, even though no one argues on this halacha that you should say the man. And we said that's based on the Arizal. The Arizal's teachings infiltrated everywhere and everyone. And therefore, things that were around and known back then, when the Mechaber wrote a Shulchan Aruch, were not yet infiltrated by Kabbalah. And that's one of the reasons why we mentioned Tikkun Chatzos. Chatzos wasn't mentioned, and also here Pashas Amon was mentioned. But he said, we do not say it because the Arizal basically said it. Remember, we said this 2 weeks ago. It's improper for you to start talking about your business before you go pray to God. First, go to shul, daven like a mensch, think about the Eibishter. Then you'll talk about man and have skulas for Parnasa. But to start your morning with thinking about skulas for Parnasa, that's wrong.
It's also Parshas Zaman is also Mikra. It's also
no. So from Aleisa Shachar,
right? Oh.
From Aleisa Shachar, you're supposed to say. So bottom line is, we don't say it before. No one says it as far as before davening. It's not in the Siddurim, but after davening, many Yidden say it every single day. Has a big school. The Mishnah Berurah writes that one who says it has a segula for Parnasa B'Revach. Who doesn't want Parnasa B'Revach, right? But so that's a school brought the Mishnah Berurah records, and the Alter Rebbe doesn't record it in the Siddur. So therefore, as the Baruch says, we do not say it as a set, a set prayer every single day. But certainly, there's nothing wrong if somebody wants to say it for the school of Parnasa. But there is another school of Parnasa recorded, and that is to recite Parshas Ha'azinu Dalta. That's a recorded school of Parnasa. That's the Chabad version. Okay. In any event. Moving along from the man, which, as we said before, it's really to emphasize the idea that all the money we make comes from the Eibishter. No matter what, at the end of the day, you won't make more, won't make less than what was allocated for you. We then discuss Aseres HaDibros, and we're going to discuss a few more points. We did that probably 2 weeks ago on the Ten Commandments. The Gemara in Brachos discusses about reciting the Aseres HaDibros, and we're going to read from the Alter Rebbe of what the Alter Rebbe wrote about this. The Mechaber Shulchan Aruch wrote that it should be said, no Siddurim have it written in the introduction, maybe later on. Some people say it, but it's not written. People don't say it before davening at all. So Alter Rebbe writes the following in his Madura Kama, in Sif Yud. This is chapter 1, Sif Yud. He writes the following. 5 lines down. V'aseres HaDibros, the 10 Commandments. It should be said, why did the Mechaber write to say this? In order so we can remember the occasion of standing on Har Sinai, right, this week's parasha, every single day, which in essence we do as part of the 6 remembrances after davening. Part of the Seis Chiris, we're reminding ourselves of. So this the Mechaber writes, we should say Aseres HaDibros for this purpose, to remember it before davening, but this chazik emunah, and to strengthen our faith. So important is the reading of Aseres HaDibros that the Gemara in Brachos Daf Yud Beis says that the sages wanted to establish it as the set nusach of Kriya Shema. Meaning that we would say, V'hafta v'yim shemaya, Anoich Hashem Elokecha. We would go after, instead of Vayemer, we would go to Aseres HaDibros. You don't have to say Vayemer min adin according to the laws of Shema. The mitzvah of Shema say the first and second paragraph, machlekes, but it's at the very maximum the first and second paragraph. It's not Vayemer. The only reason why I say Vayemer is because it's Yis Mitzrayim. Now, the Exodus. The Exodus is mentioned there, and there's a positive command to mention the Exodus every single day. So the Chachamim attached, and it also talks about tzitzis. So because of all the different reasons, they chose in the end of the But there were a few candidates. It wasn't the only candidate being voted in, like in the EU. There were many candidates that you could vote for. And we got that. Okay.
Somebody follows the news.
Anyways, so you had many candidates of over. One of them was a Adibros. Another one was Matoivu from Parshas Bilam. Yeah, there were a few where they wanted to vote in, and why do they want to get in the Aseres HaDibros? What do you mean, Krishma? You say Matoivu after Krishma? I don't think so. But the Chachamim knocked it off. It didn't get voted in because this we discussed 2 weeks ago. The Apikarsim would say, aha, so really you don't have to do all 613. 10 is enough. I do 10. 10 is the main thing. The rest is just ice cream, is icing on the cake. But the 10 is the main thing. I don't kill, I don't murder. Give me my money. Give me my schar. So in order to nullify the thoughts of the Apikarsim, therefore they didn't have to be said. And we said based on this, the Ramah writes, it cannot be said with tzibur. We don't say it in public. We don't say it in unison. We don't make any communal recital out of it. And therefore, bottom line is that today it's not said at all. Nobody says the Aseres HaDibros, even though in private it's mutter to say it, right? The whole issue is to saying it communally. We read that in the Ramah, in Sif Hey. Nonetheless, and that's what the Alter Rebbe records, nonetheless, we don't say it at all based on the Arizal, who said it's not part of the davening, and because of the minimum that we already
If we were
mentioned.
to say you take it straight from the verses in the Chumash, that's the same.
That's what people used to do.
From Yisro or from the Tzchanan, or two places.
Which place you?
Which one? Right, you have two choices: V'Yisro or V'Schana.
And that's where you do it from, not just.
Yeah, absolutely. Sure. Okay, so now let's continue. Very good, you pointed that. That is our next point. The Alter Rebbe then continues and writes, based on the Magen Avram and Lechem Chamudis, the following. And based on what we just explained, that we negated the saying of the Aseres HaDibros in public, it's forbidden to be done because of the minimum, Chachamim assered it. Therefore, it's also not customary to write the parashas of the Aseres HaDibros individually. You want to write the whole Torah and include the Aseres HaDibros? Good, you have to, right? You have one letter is missing, the Torah is possible. But don't write just 10 Commandments scrolls. We don't do that. Because, once again, any selection of the Aseres HaDibros, any what's called aflaya, taking it out of context of anywhere else of Judaism will then highlight to the Apikarsim that you only have to follow this, and this is all Judaism. So therefore we avoid also writing. And in this entered a question, what about what's right here? Right here, the camera can't see, but in many shuls, they have a inscription of the 10 Commandments and the two luchos. Many shuls, in fact, the old shul of the Rabbi, I believe in Prague, in Krakow, I believe has it, or maybe I'm getting confused with the old shul in Prague that has it. One of those two. I know that the old cemetery of Prague, which is, I think, the oldest known Jewish cemetery outside of Eretz Yisrael, it also has it's like a sculpture of the Aseres HaDibros. So many have made the Aseres HaDibros. So first, number one, maybe it wasn't al das chacham, maybe it wasn't done according to the sages. We do know that here at Sfas, it was a center of tremendous controversy 400 years ago regarding people doing sculptures and paintings and all these different things in shuls and all of these things. This was, Rabbi Tzfas had a huge controversy over all this. Some people want to walk into Tzemach Tzedek shul because of it. Today it's for other reasons, but back then it was because of this. But that was a joke.
You have it on most parochios.
Correct. It's very good, and that's exactly what is discussed. So they didn't discuss regarding the luchas, the Rabbanei Tzfas. Other poskim did. They discussed regarding animal figures, like making. We don't have any animals.
Yeah, but you look at the Ari, at the old Ari shul over there.
A lot of the...
Correct. So the Arishul, the chuvas that were discussed regarding, first of all, they discuss in general about paintings or anything that takes your mind off of God during davening. So that's why some shuls have this and some shuls don't. There was a big controversy. Those who do it are not doing anything wrong. They're following one sheet and one approach in Paiskim. But there are shuls who are makbid not to have any of this stuff in order not to distract the davener. Okay? But that was a controversy that came from here at Tzfas, because the original Arishul, they were putting up all these lion figures.
The paintings in the
so that created a huge controversy regarding that. And the luchas also is a controversy. Some poskim say you cannot put it up in a shul because we do not. That's what we just learned. But others say this is not really the luchas. What does it say on it? It just is a memory. It's like a
short version.
It doesn't contain the actual words of the Torah. It's bad. And because it doesn't contain the actual words said in the Torah, therefore, it is not a problem. Bottom line is that the Minhag Yisrael Torah, so therefore, today it's become accepted, especially in Ashkenazi shuls, to have the luchas and to have the, people have in many shuls, and I know Kfar Chabad, the shul that they have all the animals that the Shvatim were compared to. So this is a Minhag Yisrael that has become accepted, mainly by Ashkenazim. Sephardim are a lot more careful about this, and Sephardi Rabbanim will tell you not to do it, but that's in their shuls. In their shuls, you will most likely not see it happen. But in Ashkenazi shuls, it is done.
I see the tribe things at the Shem Ever. They have all the tribes.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So let's move off of the luchas, the kior. We do not say the parashas akir today. Some sidurim do. I want to say I meant Chabad sidurim, but if you look at Nusach Ashkenaz, I believe you will find parashas akir there. That's number 3 on the list of the Mechaber. Mechaber's list number 3. Right? No, sorry, that's in Sif Tes. Sif Tes, the Mechaber writes to say parashas akir. That's in parashas Esisa. It's discussing the basin, the water basin, right, where the Kohanim would wash their hands. And it makes a lot of sense for us to say why, because if we're bringing karbanos, we're saying parashas karbanos, then we have to wash our hands first. So we can say just physically go wash your hands, but that was also the feet. So The custom was to say the Parsha here. We do not say it, most likely because, once again, the Arizal doesn't record it. So what the Arizal doesn't record in davening, we basically pass him like the Arizal in davening because he knew the ladder upstairs, so he knows how to get there. So if he says this is not necessary or this shouldn't be done, we basically follow him because
How
he
much
knows the
time is it going to
secrets.
take if you're going to daven and do all this kind of stuff? Take a long time. You won't get to work.
Next, Parashas of Karbanos. So we read in the Mechaber, and the Alter Rebbe records in the Shulchan Aruch, that one should say Parashas Oyla, Mincha Shlamim Toida Chatas Asham Oyla V'Yerid, and Mincha Masach. And basically all the possible Karbanos possible. Do we say this? Nobody does. Not that I know of. In the Siddur, what we do say, corresponding to all these Karbanos that I mentioned, is the paragraph, the Mishnayos of, the Brises, really I should say, of Ezuhu Mekayman. Ezuhu Mekayman, which we say right before Haidu, so that covers pretty much most of the Karbanos. We discussed the Karban. We have the Karban Oyla discussed there. We have the Shlamim discussed there.
Right.
We have the Toida. We have the Chatos. We have the Asham.
Right.
The Oyla V'Yerid. We have the Mincha. No, we don't have the Mincha and the Sachim. That we don't have discussed. So we're missing a few. But
I don't see the other stuff.
the reason why. What's the reason why we don't say it? So possibly we can explain like
But
this.
they're all in here, yeah?
Yes, and here we do say it.
Old and
Yeah.
I don't have it. Where is that? In the Sif?
No, Ribayin Ha'ilam. Oh, in the Sif. It's in Sif. Sif Hey. That's from the Alter Rebbe. The rest of the stuff that's not in Sif Hey is in the Alter Rebbe. But Sif Hey mentions most of them. Okay? So, one of the reasons why we don't actually say these paragraphs today, so the Alter Rebbe explains the following. He says the following question. Are these paragraphs that we all just mentioned, who should they be said by? Should they be said by everyone, or is it only to be said by those who don't want to learn? Back in the day, there was many Jews were illiterate. They didn't know how to read, they didn't know how to write. Today, we don't have this concept anymore. Today, have you ever met a Jew that doesn't know how to read from a siddur here in Tzemach Tzedek Shul? Even in English, they have English transliterations. Everything's available. Everyone's pretty much
There's still people don't know how to read.
in English.
In English?
Yeah,
They can read English for sure.
Back in the day, there was nothing. There were people. There was no such thing as transliteration. There was no such thing as a siddur in a different language, besides for the carbon,
In Aramaic.
I'm talking about, let's say, 300-400 years ago. So there were people.
Yiddish.
Bottom line, that there were people. Right, they had the woman sitter. It was called the woman sitter. There were people who. They didn't know how to learn, so they would just learn prayers by heart, and they would say prayers by heart. So possibly, this is the question: Are all these karbanos, all these things you mentioned, will be here all day, right? Is this all to be said by everyone, or only for people who really don't have an occupation of Torah learning, and therefore this is what they do? So the Alter Rebbe discusses this in the Shulchan Aruch, likewise the Mishnah Berurah, and bottom line consensus is like this: that someone who knows how to learn, he should spend his time learning Torah rather than saying these parashiyos. He should only say them on occasion, but he should fulfill them with Ezu Mekayman every single day. And that's pretty much what we do. Instead of actually reading the paragraphs from the Torah of all these sacrifices, we mention the brises that discuss them of Ezu Mekayman, which anyways we're supposed to say. And we before and say Rabbi Ne'elam to be considered like we're doing all the sacrifice. We're basically getting two for the price of one. Even though we're not saying the actual paragraphs, but we're getting it in here. Now,
It says Mishnah here.
yeah, it's a brise.
It's a brise.
Ezu Mekayman is a
Mishnah.
brise. It's,
Tan and Rabbanan.
I don't remember.
It says Mishnah.
Okay.
Anyway.
What's the reason why the Karbanos are said? So the Alter Rebbe here brings that there's a klal, kol ha'omer Torahs eila kilu yikru eila, kol ha'omer Torahs chazik v'chatos. When we read the verses from the Torah, it's as if we're actually offering them. So being that today, unfortunately, on the Beis Hamikdash, we cannot bring the Karbanos when we come to shul, or anywhere, when we say these paragraphs, it is as if we are right then and there bringing these sacrifices. And because of this, we have a discussion regarding a few different things, such as how should these karbanos be recited. So, Ezu Mekayman, we're not actually reading the verses, so it's not exactly the same thing. But nonetheless, we do read Parshas HaTamid, which is over here, in which the actual verses are read. This is Parshas HaTamid talking about the daily offering. morning and afternoon offering. This is from the Torah. So this is considered as if we're actually reading it. So how do we have to treat that? It's pretty much the only carbon that we actually read from Scripture, right? Nothing else we read, no other carbonos that we read from Scripture in our Siddur. So there's the following discussion. First, we already read inside the Mechaber and Zivav, you cannot read it by nighttime. In other words, we take this very seriously, and also up in Shemayim it's taken very seriously. In heaven, it's really considered you bring a carbon. When you're saying reading carbonos, you bring a carbon. It's considered bringing carbon, so you can't say it at night. Why? Because you can't bring carbonos at night. So therefore, the halacha is, the Alter Rebbe writes in the Shulchan, the Mechaber wrote it, the Alter Rebbe writes in the Shulchan Aruch in both his first and second version, and this is the halacha without argument, that you cannot say the carbonos at night. So in the example I gave you, where we wouldn't have to travel very early and make it there to the slaughterhouse early, we would only be able to start from the carbonos and onwards, meaning from Parshas HaTamid and onwards, after Aleis HaShabbat. But the previous parts you can say earlier, that's not a problem. As we said before, maybe because the scriptures can read at night, but other than that issue, you can really say that all earlier, even what's called here Pashas Trumas Hadeshin, the offering of the removal of the ash. That is not really a korban, and that was actually done before Aleis HaShabbat, so that's certainly not a problem to read at night, even though the Alter Rebbe says that only in winter days you should do that, but in summer you should read it right before the daytime.
Also skips.
What's that?
You skip Shema.
Who skips?
You skip it before Alat Hashem.
You could say, this is not saying it for the sake of the
That's
mitzvah.
what I was saying.
This is not for the sake of the mitzvah. This is just saying it for the sake of, that you're saying, that we say Shema. That's what you meant earlier, referring to all these prayers.
Yeah, but that's also a pasukim from the Torah, so it's at night.
Right, correct, that's true.
And if you
That's
don't,
true.
Yeah.
So, it could be also, so now that the truth is that there's another eitzah here, and that is the Eish Avram says that any prayer any scripture you're saying as a prayer, you're not saying it as learning is okay to say. So maybe that's something that we rely on. Because if you don't say that opinion, then what about, we daven Ma'ariv every night, we say Shir Amalis, we mention Psukim from Tehillim, how can you do that? We say Krish Shalamita, we say... So I guess you can say anything that's a set nusach is not a problem to say at night because it's not considered. But nonetheless, the Parshas Akedah is meant to be a message for us and not just a prayer. It's meant, so maybe there's a little different.
Morning blessings vis-a-vis Alas HaShachar.
We're going to get there. That's chapter 46. Siman Vav. But that certainly you have to wait till Aleis to say. Yes, you have to wait till Aleis to say. Okay, another discussion we find is, does it have to be said standing or sitting? So the answer to that is that in the Madura Kama, the Alter Rebbe says, hey, if this is literally like a carbon, you got to be standing. If a Kayin is sitting back and throwing blood, he's thrown out. He's out of the place. He just did Pasal Aveda. There's rules. There's rules. You can't just kneel before the game in the middle of the anthem. You got to stand up, right? You got to stand up when you do the Aveda. So this is what the halacha is in the Madura Kama. You have to stand up when you say karbanos. Does anybody practice this? Do you stand up when you say karbanos?
You're usually doing it with your talis on. You are standing.
No.
What?
I'm sitting.
Parshas HaTamid? You're standing for Parshas HaTamid?
I'm usually sitting down
right
with my
here?
talis over me, and I'm sitting down.
People stand up. Typically, they stand up with their talis and they don't.
Answer.
No, but you're not
Madura
saying
Basra, the Alter Rebbe omitted it. The Alter Rebbe writes in the Madura Basra that you don't have to stand because it's not literal to that extent. So here we have a reversal of opinion of the Alter Rebbe from his first version, which is probably about 30 years apart, to his second version. That's why at first people would stand, just like the Kayin stands, and then the Alter Rebbe says it's not necessary. Why? Because if you're going that far, then only Kayanim should be allowed to say it. No one else should be allowed to say it. Because the standing's the problem. You're a czar who serves in the Beis Hamikdash.
You're not a Kohen.
So you're not a Kohen anyway. So it's as if that the Kohen, so this is what the Rebbe says, when I say it, it's as if you're bringing it.
Well, what about
you daven here in the morning? So you're the shliach of Tzemach Tzedek for all of our karbonos.
What about Birkat Kohanim? You stand? Birkat
You have to
Kohanim.
stand for Birchas Kohanim?
In the morning.
In the morning? We stand for Birchas HaTorah, absolutely.
Birkat Kohanim.
That we say afterwards, but Pashtus, you're already standing for Birchas HaTorah, you're now fulfilling the mitzvah of Limud HaTorah. Now's the mitzvah being fulfilled. Do you have to? You don't have to stand. Okay.
Is there a halacha you're supposed to wash before you come into the shiur? You said you go over that?
Oh, we didn't go over that. We will discuss washing before davening, if that's what you mean. We're going to do one more point on the karbanos, and that's as follows. This may not be well known, but it's a two-liner in there and stuck in the middle of halacha tests. And the Alter Rebbe states the following based on the ruling of the Shlah's
Halacha
father
test
in the Alter Rebbe, only in the Alter Rebbe. Okay, he writes the following. The Alter Rebbe states that if you know that you did a sin that's liable for a carbon, then since the carbon stuff is real, the parasha is reading the parasha as if you really bring the carbon, you should say it. So he gives an example. A person knows he didn't do a certain mitzvah. He woke up at 9:11, 1 minute after Tzayis Man Kriyashma. He missed Kriyashma, it's gone. What should he do? Open up a chumash, read Parshas Ha'olah, and then say, God, may this recital of the scripture be considered as if I literally brought an Olah sacrifice. And then you would have to do, it's not done. You don't just serve meat to God. He needs some bread, he needs some wine, a real meal. So that's what's called the mincha, and then the nesachim. You'd say all three. You'd say first the carbon oila, then the mincha, then the nesachim. And he gives another example. Or if a person thought of doing a lysis, a person who transgresses a negative command, he has to bring a carbon chatas if that negative command carries a kares penalty. For example, if, let's say, someone ate chaylev, chas v'shalom, okay? They didn't know, they were messed over by the hashgacha. The hashgacha said they thought someone was checking and no one checked. This used to be a big problem. Chaylev was infiltrating a lot of rabbinot in any event. So if someone by mistake ate chaylev, someone by mistake they ate blood of kares, such as if they purchase chicken hearts and the mashgiach, or there was no mashgiach to remove the inner blood, a big problem that was around 10 years ago. Many people were nichshol, so he's chayiv kares. So then he would say the carbon chatos paragraph. Now, if he didn't actually eat the heart with the kares blood, but he thought about it, he was fantasizing about it. Okay? So in such a case, he has to say the oila sacrifice. You have to bring carbon oila for thinking of doing a negative command.
Wow.
So the question, and then the Alter Rebbe concludes, and there's one more thing. If you have to say Hagoyimol on one of the 4 things you give thanks to God for, right? Let's say you traveled, you to the United States, you passed over the sea, you were on a cruise, you got out of prison. Hopefully, no one happened to anybody, God forbid. But let's say Shalom Rabashkin gets out of prison, right? And someone who was sick, Chas v'Shalom, and he survives and he recuperates. So in all those cases, he says Hagoyimol. You also bring a carbon taida to Hashem. How do you bring the carbon taida? Says the Alter Rebbe, read Parshas HaTorah. And he says this all should be done immediately after you become liable. Don't put it on the bucket list to do in another year. This should be done immediately as soon as it happens. A person should read Parshas HaTorah to thank Hashem. Now, even though this ruling is brought in the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch, as the Rebbe notes in a letter, we don't see people careful in doing so, but then he concludes, just because people aren't careful doesn't mean you can take white out and cross out the halacha. So it seems the gist of that letter is, it's a debate how to understand that letter, but it seems like it's saying you can do what it says here. So if you need to bring a carbon, chatos, but you have to know what you're saying, because if you really weren't chayav a chatos, and you say it's considered bringing a carbon at the wrong time, so it's a problem. So you have to know. You have to ask a Rav who's Baki and the laws of carbon.
Because you have to do it close to the time. You can't do it 10 years later or something.
He says miyad.
Right.
Right, it's miyad shenas chayim.
So
better late than never, but you know.
No, but if you're Bali Tshuva and you did, I did this and then
so you can say it now for all. You can bring one chatas, for it says about Tshuva that was Mechal Shabbos, he can bring 39 chatasim for all the 39 malachas he ever did. So when it's not about Tshuva, he has to bring the carbon chatas for every malach he ever did. That's why in the future, when we're going to have to bring actual carbon chatasim, the line of the religious people is going to be a lot longer than the line of the average. Yeah, honestly. Because someone who knows about Shabbos, knows about that you can't do malacha, and just made mistakes in the identity of what's forbidden and what's not, then he's going to have to bring a chatas for every single time. Like if someone cut with a scissor tablecloth, so to have a chatas for every single
one. A lot of money.
Not just one chatas. Someone who's not from, doesn't know anything about Shabbos. So he bring one chatas for his whole tablecloth cutting.
But if you do know, how many, what?
39.
If a person, okay, that was just a side point that he brought up. But the point is that there's kabbanas that are brought corresponding to sins that we do, and this shouldn't be a motivation. Okay, now you can just sit and say a few lines and you're good to go.
No.
It's the opposite. That if you happen to already sin, then this is a tikkun that a person should do, and it could be practiced even today. But you got to get the carbon right. Moving
that's
along.
in that Sif Hey. That's at the end of Sif Hey in the Alter Rebbe.
This is in the Alter Rebbe in Sif Tes. Madura Basra, Siman Aleph, Sif Tes.
Oh.
We are now moving along to, Parshas HaTamid, even though it's mentioned here, it's also mentioned in chapter 48. We're going to discuss it there, but basically Parshas HaTamid is super important. In chapter 48, we're going to discuss more about it. Chapter Memches, Siman Memches. That's this. That's what I spoke about earlier, that this is the only paragraph from Scripture of a carbon that we still read. So this even woman is supposed to say. Even women are chayiv in saying Parshas HaTamid. Okay? Ezu Makaiman also is designated in chapter 50, so we're going to have a repeat in more detail about that later on. Okay? In Parshas HaTamid, women have to say. Even a woman who, let's say she's doing the abridged davening because she's busy with kids, etc., she should say Parshas HaTamid every single day. Women are chayiv in Parshas HaTamid. Okay? Also Karbanos, women that have the time, they should say, everything we say in the Siddur, they should say as well. We read in the Mechaber and Sif, right, was it Sif Zion?
Sif Zion.
No, it's Sif Ches that you should say, V'shachat Eisar Yechaz Fenei Hashem. Why do we say that? We wonder, why do we say that liner, that one-liner right here?
Yeah, we do it at a mincha. Every day, right.
Before Zion David.
Right.
What's this one-liner? Where did it come from?
So
this is from the Mechaber, we just read. But why? Why do we say it? So the Alter Rebbe explains the reason why we say it is because it's referring to Yitzchak. We're reminding Hashem of Yitzchak's self-sacrifice. Once again, in addition to the Akedah, we're getting another good, a few more good points in of reminding Hashem of the merits of our forefathers. The Alter Rebbe likewise mentions here in the last line in Sif Tes another paragraph that we should say, which is done by Chabad Chassidim until this very day. It's also brought in the Siddur, the parsha of Lechem Hapanim, to say it on Shabbos, and therefore we follow what it says here. We say it every Shabbos at the end of davening. We say the parsha of the Shtei HaLechem. That is the Shobra paragraph. We say it after davening is over, before the 6 remembrances. Okay? Right. So that's printed in the Siddur. The best thing to remember to say it is to, right, so the best thing to remember to say it is say before Tehillim.
That's what I do.
You can say it after Tehillim, but, the memory...
No, after Tehillim, you want to get out of it already. Right.
So the best thing is just to say it before Tehillim.
That's what I usually do, but I'm usually not getting caught up with
even though there was a whole discussion, there was a journal that went back and forth, so that, how different people were writing that you should be said before Tehillim or after Tehillim. Now the Rebbe said it after Tehillim. So listen, I don't know when the Rebbe said it, but we need to say it. That we agree. So if you're not going to say it after Tehillim because you're not going to remember, you're too busy thinking about when you should say it, then say it before Tehillim.
Where is that written in Tess? I don't see it.
No, this is not Alter Rebbe.
Oh.
No, whatever we read in the Shulchan Aruch, we already read. Now we said the order of this class, the way it's going to work, we're going to read the original black and white Shulchan Aruch of the Mechaber, and then we're going to add from all the Achronim, including the Shulchan Aruch around.
So where do we go?
So these are the additions.
The whole Siman? We did the whole Siman already?
We did the whole Siman. Parshas HaKteris. We're now up to discussion of Kteris. Kteris was mentioned in the Mechaber, right? If you see over there, he mentions reciting the Kteris. We're going to mention a few different things about the Kteris. Number one, the saying of the Kteris is one of the most important and one of the most effective paragraphs that we can read in davening. It has tremendous Kabbalistic meaning. It is part, the Arizal we know, created or revealed to us that prayer is a Sulam Mutzav Arza Reisha Megia Shemayim. Prayer is a ladder going from earth to heaven, and every stage of the prayer is going to another world, right? We're familiar with this. How Karbanis and Haidu is the world of Asiya, Baruch Shamar, and Psukkah de Zimmer is the world of Yetzirah, and then we have Birchas Krish and Shema, which is the world of Bria, and then we have Shemines, the world of Atzilus, and then we make our way down. So what is the position of Kteris in this? He says, even though he doesn't connect us with other parts of the pre-davening, but Kteris, he says, is necessary as you want to make sure you're going up that ladder alone. You don't want to take the Yetzer Hara with you. If we bring him with us, what are we going to accomplish? Right? It's the famous joke to say the difference between a Lubavitcher and a Polisher davening. The Polisher, this is just a joke, not necessarily is this the case. He davens very, very quickly, and they asked him, why are you davening so quickly? He said, because I'm trying to run away from the Yetzer Hara. The Yetzer Hara is chasing after me. So he asked the Lubavitcher, no, you also have the Yetzer Hara. Why are you davening so slowly? He says, what What is the worth of running away quickly if he's with you on the train? So,
But he never went. He never went to Kfar Chaban. See how fast they daven over there.
so you should come to Tzemach Tzedek, will get a nice slow davening.
Right.
That's for sure. The slowest davening in town. All the
Yes, for sure. Slower than that word. Slower than that word.
Okay, so and Sfardim do slow also. No, but anyways. Okay, so that is the Kabbalistic significance, is it gets rid of the klippas. It cleans up the klippas, that the klippas don't join our ladder upstairs. We want to go alone. We have enough problems. We want to go alone and be with the Eibishter for these 40, 50 minutes. He explains, and a person goes with his klippas to davening, that's the machshava zaros. Then we start suddenly thinking about this individual and that business deal and this is what we have to do today. We schedule everything and think about everything but what we're supposed to be looking at. That happens when the klippas come on the train. K'toiros, say it with kavana, it kills the klippas. It's the preparation of getting on that ladder. So that is the purpose of K'toiros. We have some amazing stories recorded regarding K'toiros. First of all, the Gemara Maseches Shabbos Daf Pei Ches, when it discusses the famous court case that took place in heaven between Moshe Rabbeinu and the Malachi Asharis about receiving the Torah. This week's Parsha Pasach Yisrael, right? So it says the Malachi Asharis told Hashem, we want the Torah, leave it with us. And Moshe said, no, I'm taking it. There was a tug of war on the Torah. And in the end, we know Moshe Rabbeinu won, and in order, so, and Hashem told the Malachim that he won fair and square, be a good sport, don't be a sore loser, so they decided to give him a matana, a present, to show that they are giving, that they agree that they lost the case with a good heart. This is very different from most court cases, right? Yeah. They want to show with a good heart that they lost. What matana did they give Moshe Rabbeinu? Parshas Haktoros. The Parshas Haktoros, where we read every morning and every day before Mincha, and and at the end of davening, this Parshas Haktoros has ability to destroy evil decrees, destroy klippas. Its power is tremendous. There's a famous story here in Eretz Yisrael, 1945, I believe it was, or maybe 44. The German army, the Nazi army, was making its way through Algeria, was conquering through all over Europe and all over North Africa. They were already in Egypt, and they had one line of defense remaining to conquer of the British. And if that would have been conquered, Eretz Yisrael would have been doomed. They would have taken over Eretz Yisrael. Rabbani Yerushalayim knew exactly what was going on in Europe. They knew this was a sakana mamashas, a literal danger for the entire jury of Eretz Yisrael. And they therefore, all the Kabbalists of Beis Kol Yeshiva, as well as the Gedolei HaRabbanim of Yerushalayim, they one morning woke up very early, they were fasting, they tabled in the mikvah, they positioned themselves in the four corners of Jerusalem, and they all read Parshas HaKtoros together, and that morning was the fall of the advancement of the Nazi army in southern Israel, and they were pushed back and never made it through. So the power of the K'toros, when we say we should have kavana, and it's also recorded in the Poskim that because, again, the point is that the reading of all these things, of these paragraphs, they're not just like reminders of, let's remember what used to happen in the Beis Hamikdash. We're actually bringing it on a certain level. It's actually happening on a certain level. K'toros was every day. In the Holy of Holies was in Yom Kippur, but every day the Kohen would bring a K'toros. That was the prize of all the Avedis, was the K'toros. So Meretz Hashem we're going to get, I think, once a year you get it. Something like that. You don't get it every day. Unless you become a Kohen Gadol. So the K'toros, so when we read the Parshas K'toros, it's serious stuff, and it's brought down in Sfarim that if you make a mistake, you read too many Samanim or too few, it's almost considered that you brought a invalid K'toros to the altar, which is a very serious crime.
That's what you count.
So that's why there's a minhag to count. But the reason of the minhag is not just because to know that there's 11, but to make sure you don't add one, you don't subtract one. You say exactly the way it is, because it's very serious. It's spiritually, you're affecting something with your words. This minhag was a minhag of the Alter Rebbe, as writes the Shara Koil. The Alter Rebbe was nohig to count the K'toros. And this is also, the Rebbe does this also. Sfardi minhag is brought in the Kafachai, the Ben Ishchai, the Chesed La'alafim, and this is the part of what we should do. We should be very careful and have a lot of kavanah when we say the Parshas HaKtoros. Wow. Ma Toivu. So Ma Toivu is an interesting prayer that we all say in the beginning. It's not mentioned in the Shulchan Aruch. It's not mentioned in the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch. I don't think it's mentioned in any Shulchan Aruch. Where does it come from? So the first siddur ever written, we mentioned this 2 weeks ago, was by the Rasag, Rabbi Sadia Goin. The Rasag wrote the first siddur, and there he writes saying the prayer of Ma Toivu. And one of the reasons why he's saying is because it represents a shul. Bilam was trying to get Hashem to remove the Shekhinah from Klal Yisrael, and instead Hashem made him say, Ma toivu elecha Yaakov. See how great their dwelling places are, how good they are for the Shekhinah to dwell. They're so modest, and therefore when we walk into a shul, a place of worship, which the Shekhinah is meant to reside, we first say this pasuk of Ma toivu elecha Yaakov. It's basically 3 psukim that we say of Ma toivu.
When was this first siddur written?
Rabbi Amram Gaon.
Huh?
It was Rav Sadia Gaon.
Yeah, but
Rasak, Siddur Rasak.
But how long ago?
It's a pasuk of
No.
Moses.
When he wrote the siddur, how long ago was it when he made? You said
Sadia Gaon lived 1,000 years ago.
It wasn't a siddur before.
If he wrote the first siddur, how can it be a siddur before the first siddur?
Okay, but I thought davening was supposed to happen after the.
That doesn't mean there was a siddur. People davened, people said words, but was there a printed siddur? So, okay. Regarding Adon Olam. So Adon Olam is really amazing. It's recorded also in...
this stuff is only in the Alter
in Reb Sadia Gaon, Reb Amram Gaon, Reb Hai Gaon recorded, it's recorded in Rishonim, that the saying of Adon Olam, when you pay attention, is a very remarkable prayer, that these Gaon, Reb Hai Gaon and Reb Amram Gaon said that we guarantee anyone who says this prayer with kavanah, we will personally help them and assist them up in heaven for whatever they need. This is written in the Machzor, if you notice. The Machzor writes this, the Chabad Machzor for Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. Before Adon Olam, it's not only in Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, it's any day of the year. A person who says Adon Olam with extreme kavanah, it's a very, very special prayer and has a very special effect.
Where are those words from originally? That's not finished. No.
We don't know who composed it. I guess it was composed by Rav Ahai Gaon and Rav Amram.
So where are we in the?
I said we're outside.
Oh, okay.
We're not inside.
Not even in the shul. No,
Talk
no.
pretty fast.
We're trying to get a lot done. Yigdal.
I know.
Yigdal Elokim Chai. Right? Who doesn't know the song of Yigdal? Right? So notice how blank, not in the Alter Rebbe Siddur. So we as Lubavitchers don't say it. Many other people do say it. Many do say it. Many don't say it. It's not written in the Shulchan Aruch, but neither is Ma Toivu, and neither is Adon Olam. So what's the deal with Yigdal, and why is it missing? Yigdal is talking about, it's a poem going on the 13 principles of faith, articles of faith. Why don't we say it? It sounds so important. Well, a great controversy erupted over the saying of Yigdal. The Arizal is known to have blanked it, to have negated it. And we don't know why. But the Kumna Rav, who wrote the Sefer Shulchan Atar, he was quite vocal about his positions on things. And he writes some quite severe things against the saying of Yigdal. He says, number one, the Arizal says not to say it. The Baal Tanya doesn't write it in the Siddur, and it must be because the Arizal saw with Ruach HaKodesh that the anonymous author of this prayer had some heresy. And the heresy is embedded in the poem, and therefore we don't say it. I mean, think about it. If somebody wrote a poem of principles of faith, and you know how poems work. Poetry is a whole school of wisdom. So there can be many hints in poetry that you don't see with the naked eye. So he says that a prayer like this, going on the articles of faith, you really have to know your author. And if you don't know your author well, we shouldn't say. So it must be that Arizal knew that there was some heresy involved in the composition of this prayer. Quite a bold statement to make. He then goes ahead and says that there was a known story that happened in Prague, where, or maybe it was a different city, but there was a known story that happened in Europe, where there was, where the minhag of that community was, they were Yigdal opponents. They were anti-Yigdal. And so a new Rav came into town, and he was pro-Yigdal. So pro-Yigdal came against anti-Yigdal, and he entered Yigdal into the prayer of the shul. And it says the first Shabbos that he came, and he davened, and he said Yigdal, there was a sudden earthquake, and the walls of the shul fell. This is what he writes. Wow. So he says this is a sign that nobody should say the prayer. But then we have, on the other hand, the Mishmeret Shalom of Kundina, another Chassidish Admar, lived about 150 years ago, give or take. And he writes and defends the saying of Yigdal, saying that many Jews say it throughout, and many Yisrael say. He says, in fact, even though the Alter Rebbe omitted it from his Siddur, in Tanya, the Alter Rebbe mentions parts of the prayer of Yigdal. So if it was heretical, why on earth would he mention the prayer of Yigdal? So we see there's different bases, there's different positions. Bottom line is like this. We do not say it as the Alter Rebbe didn't write it in the Siddur, but at the same time, we don't tell people who say it, you're heretical. That was the position of the Shulchan HaTahar, and he has the right to his position, but nonetheless,
But the
there's another
13
position.
principles of faith is from the Rambam, right? But
But he didn't offer Yigdal.
Uh-huh.
He didn't offer Yigdal.
Yigdal's a sort of a take-off.
Okay, a few last points on the karbanos. Should a person say karbanos if he will miss the minyan? What is priority? What should be prioritized? Davening with the minyan or saying of karbanos? So for the fast daveners, they ask, what's the nafkamina? A few more seconds won't hurt, right? So a few more, if you can do a quick karbanos, a quick cooking of the karbanos in 30 seconds flat. So I don't think 30 seconds is going to make it or break it. But if you're davening slow and paying attention to the words and everything, it can take a good 10, 15 minutes to say karbanos. So it's a real question. 10, 15 minutes in a fast minyan can mean the difference between you being by Baruch Shannon and being by Elena.
Right.
So what do you do? So it's clear according to Nigla, according to the revealed parts of Torah, the main purpose of prayer is Shemona Esrei. So skip everything so you can say Shemona Esrei with the minyan. Even skip Sukkah de Zimra. Say quickly Birchas Kriyishma, and start Shemona Esrei with the minyan. However, from a Hasidic or Kabbalistic approach, we've discussed this in the past, we follow the Arizal's ladder, and we say very simply, how can you catch the train from 10 stops down if you don't catch the train to the 10th stop? You can't, there's no skipping on the ladder. You have to walk up it from step to step. So you can't, it's like the guy who was in such a hurry to catch the bus, he doesn't have time to take his bus card with him. You're not going to accomplish anything. So based on the Arizal, we are accustomed to, most Chassidim and many Sfardim are accustomed never to skip. They just read always from the beginning. But the question is that's referring to Psuki the Zimmer. What about Karbanos? Is Karbanos also included? So we don't find any writings of the Rebbe directly on this subject of Karbanos specifically. But we can go back to the Arizal's, ladder, and since we said that Parshas HaKetores is part of that ladder, so certainly that should be said and should not be skipped. But everything else, there's room to learn that it can be made up after davening. Nonetheless, as the Rebbe mentioned in the letters on this subject regarding Psukkah de Zimra, once you start getting used to these leniencies of skipping and not doing in order, even though right now you may win the battle, meaning you may do the right halacha by skipping it and davening Shemona with the minyan, you may lose the war because it cheapens the idea of saying these paragraphs. And we see that when the Eitz Hara sees that, hey, I can skip this stuff for the sake of Jewish law. I have to because I came late. So, it cheapens the idea. So therefore, normally by Chassidim we're accustomed to never skip. But let's say by Mincha. By Mincha, you're about to start Shemona Esrei. If you could, say Asher. If you can't, start Shemona Esrei right away, and you'll make up Karbanos right afterwards. You make up Asher right afterwards. Of course, you should, when you're walking to Mincha, you can already say it on the way. You don't have to say it in the shul. You can say it as you are going.
So if it's close to, if you're davening Mincha and it's close to Shkia,
yeah.
You should go right into Shemona Esrei, you should just only Karbanos?
That's a very good question. The Ketores before Mincha is also important because we need to get rid of the Klippas. So the Ketores is very important. Now, usually Zman Tefillah is more important than Minyan. However, we've discussed in length in a previous class that in truth you can daven Mincha till Tzeisa Kechal. So therefore, Minadin, you can daven till Tzeisa Kechal. And therefore, it's you can do the Ketores. You can say the Ketores. I can say you can do either way.
You can say Mincha till Tzeisa Kechal, even though there's
Minadin, yes, you can say Mincha till Tzeisa Kechal. We had a whole class on
yeah,
this.
some guy asked that question on Shabbos. It was very curious.
We had a whole class on it. Okay, let's just
We were
begin.
late. We were at
Guys,
the ski
congratulations.
already.
We have concluded Siman Aleph. I want to just
Just close
begin
the eyes.
Siman Beis. Okay, and we're going to do the bulk of Siman Beis next week. Siman Beis is quite a short Siman in the in the actual Shulchan Aruch. In the Shulchan Aruch and the Mechaber, that is. It covers the laws dealing with getting dressed. Now, how complex can that be? Answer:
Don't
leave
put
it
your
to-
socks on
leave
before
it
you
to
should.
Judaism to find a way. Okay? And therefore we have, even on the Shulchan Aruch, as I'm saying, we don't have a lot of halachas here. In the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch and other achreinim, we have a lot of details here. It's a packed siman with a lot of information dealing with the laws of modesty, which, as the world thinks, modesty refers to women. Women need to be modest. No, according to the Jewish law, the second chapter in Shulchan Aruch, the laws of modesty apply to both genders, applies to men as well. The laws of tznius likewise apply to men. There is no difference.
It's a chalukah.
From this aspect, as we're going to learn. So we're going to learn about how to get dressed, not revealing parts of the body, getting dressed under the covers, wearing shorts, how to act in the bathroom. If in the bathroom it's a free-for-all, also there you need to be with modesty, with tznius. We're going to discuss regarding the order of getting dressed. Do you first put on your yarmulke and your shirt, or you first do your pants, top to bottom, bottom to top? How do you get undressed? Which articles of clothing do you put on first? Which do you put the right side first or the left side? What does the lefty do? What about shoes? Which shoes do you tie first? What if you don't have laces? What if you don't tie your laces? Right. What do you do in all these situations of getting dressed? That's all. The meaning of the yarmulke, that's also in this chapter, even though it's not in the Mechaber, but it is discussed. We're going to discuss all about the yarmulke, and that is all coming up in Mitzvah next week. So let's just begin the first two seifim. I want to begin the first two, okay? Right? And from Simchas Torah, we learn never conclude with a conclusion. Always conclude with a question. Start voracious. We don't just leave it at Sif Aleph. Lo yilbash chalukei meyushav. A person is not to wear his shirt while sitting. What does that mean? Wait. That means don't get out of your covers when you wake up in the morning and throw off, right, you're throwing off your covers. Back then, no pajamas. Pajamas weren't the in thing yet, so people slept in the nude. And don't just throw off your cover and put on your shirt. No. Grab your shirt under the cover, lika chalukai, sneak it in there under the cover, v'yachnis boy, and enter into your shirt under the cover. This needs some training. It's going to be a bit complex.
Remember in Yeshiva.
Remember in
I don't see it.
Shabbat.
Pajamas.
It's not written that way.
It
I
is.
see the first beginning, then it gets cut off, and then it starts some other two words. And
Eli,
it's-
Gak,
Lo
Gak,
yilbash
Gak,
yushav
Gak,
v'yikach
Gak,
chalukah
Gak,
v'yachnas
Gak,
b'ezreisem
Gak,
b'den
Gak,
hashekel.
Gak.
Yeah,
While you're
same
still
words.
lying down. He says you get dressed while you're still lying down. People did it in Hadar Torah.
It doesn't apply to them.
Getting dressed under the covers.
Yeah, I agree. If you're sleeping with pajamas, it doesn't exactly apply. But the idea still applies of tznius that we're going to discuss next week. Right, you enter your arms into it while you're still lying under the covers. It's not to misunderstand this halacha. It doesn't mean you can't get dressed sitting. You always have to get dressed lying down. It's referring to being covered versus being exposed. And it ends up that if you get dressed this way, voila, you enter out of your covers after a night's sleep, and you're already dressed. How do you like that? Sif Beis. Al Yaimar. A person should not say, Hinani b'chedrei chadarim. I am in my own private room. Miroi eini. There is no one who sees me. I can go out as if I'm in the nature, right? I can be a naturalist in my room.
Oh boy.
Says the Mechaber, Ki HaKadosh Baruch Hu Malach Kavedai. The Eibusha sees you, and he doesn't like nature resorts. He doesn't like naturalism. He wants people to be modest about their body, even in a case of where no human beings are around. Just the Eibusha is around. So we're going to discuss it more next week. But the idea of this is, of the reason why we keep this is the Alter Rebbe, we're going to read next week from the Alter Rebbe Sif Aleph, is it's not for the Eibusha. It's not like God gets upset or he gets queasy when he sees us in our natural state as we're born, as they say, our birth costume. But it's because it's for us. This is for us. As when a person is sensitive and caring about his body and the exposure of his body, it teaches him a sense of modesty. And this is a basic of modesty. If a person isn't modest in private, his body gets used to the idea of not being modest. And that can then trickle to the outside as well. So the idea is really for us versus than for Hashem. But it's a halacha. So we'll discuss some more next week. We'll conclude though with the one story. This is a story that happened with King David and his father-in-law, King Shaul HaMelech. And this emphasizes halacha we're going to learn next week in Eretz Hashem, that the laws of tznius apply not only b'chedri chadarim, but even in the bathroom. Even when one goes to the bathroom, it's not a free-for-all. In the shower it is. In the shower, what are you supposed to do? In the shower, you're not going to take a shower with clothing on. So that's okay. But in the bathroom, using the bathroom, the toilet, that's not a free-for-all. There are halachas of how exposed the person is allowed to be. And we see this emphasized in the Gemara and Brachas with the story with Shaul HaMelech. Shaul HaMelech had a great dislike for David HaMelech, for his son-in-law. He was married to Michal, his daughter. And he knew that David HaMelech was next in line to become king and not his son, Yonasan. And he wanted to kill him. He thought that David was considered a raidif, someone who was trying to expose him, to throw him out of the monarchy, and he wanted to kill him as capital punishment for that. So there's a famous Tanakh, right, of the big battle of Shaul and David, and Shaul was chasing after David, and David was hiding inside of a cave. There was a deep cave, and he's hiding inside this cave with 400 warriors, 400 really strong men, and Shaul's with his whole army chasing after David, and a divine providence places into Shaul's head, hey, you need to use the bathroom. According to Halacha, you shouldn't use the bathroom in public. So why don't you go into this beautiful cave right here and use the bathroom there? So he went to the cave to use the bathroom, and David HaMelech's warriors came deep into the cave and said, you won't believe what prize God has just given us. Your enemy is right there. One sword, he's finished. He's gone.
And David didn't let him.
And David HaMelech said, Chas v'shalom, that I will touch Mashiach Hashem, and Hashem will not give back retribution. God forbid that I should harm Shaul, the king of Israel. But what will I do? I will show him that I could have harmed him. So he took his knife, and Shaul went to the bathroom with his cloak on. He was covered, and he cut part of his cloak. So when Shaul went back down after doing his needs, David HaMelech whistled to him. I don't know if he whistled, he did something to get their attention. But David knew how to whistle. He tried to get their attention, and he said, look at your cloak, Shaul. And he said, Shaul, if I really hated you, I could have killed you. This is a sign that I don't hate you, and please, let's stop the battle, let's stop the fight. The Gemara then says, the Gemara asks a question on the wording there in Navi that was used by David HaMelech, which grammatically doesn't make sense. And the Gemara says, David HaMelech said to Shaul, because you were following the laws of God and covering yourself properly when you went to the bathroom, therefore, in that merit, I did not kill you. And instead, I resided to taking part of your cloak. So we see from this story of the importance of modesty.
There's another time where he could